Mayur Kalbag is an expert in the subject of Aghoris. What are Aghoris? The world knows them as Indian Babas, Indian sadhus who supposedly eat flesh, consume alcohol. They're supposedly the left hand of God, the right hand of God. What is the breakdown of that left hand of God path to enlightenment? What's the role of Shiva in all of this? Lots of information coming your way with Mayur Kalbag, who authored the book Aghori, An Untold Story. For the sake of this book, he had to interact with Aghoris himself. And in this episode, he's spoken about his experiences, his learnings, and his inspirations from the misunderstood world of Aghoris. For conversations just like this, make sure you follow The Ranveer Show on Spotify. We're Spotify exclusive now, which means that every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. And without further ado, I'll let you slip into this dark but beautiful conversation. Mayur Kalbag, sir, thank you for being on the show again. Just recorded an incredible Hindi episode with you about the subject of Aghoris.
Yes.
And that particular episode ended with the fact that the world of spiritualism, chasing spiritual growth, talking about spirituality, learning about it, has so much other interesting stuff attached to it. Almost sci-fi sort of stuff. We have talked about aliens in ancient Indian culture. We have talked about, of course, Aghoris, sadhus in ancient Indian culture.
Right.
We have talked about siddhis, which are the so-called superpowers that you gain from your meditative processes.
Yes.
And unfortunately, when it comes to the subject of, say, Aghoris or Naga Babas, all that the Western world knows, and the Western world controls mainstream media, all that they know is, oh, Aghori Babas, yeah, they eat human flesh. They live in cremation grounds. They're angry people. They'll come kill you and then eat your body. They think things like this.
Yeah.
When actually there's a whole world of depth associated with Aghori sadhus. I read your book over the last 2 weeks. I've never read a book so fast and with so much intensity. I was just blown away. I was like, what is all this stuff in this book?
Really?
Yeah. And we didn't touch upon a lot of the topics in the other episode.
Yeah.
Because I just want to give an introduction to who you were on the Hindi podcast. Here is where we'll dive deep into your knowledge about Aghoris and, for lack of a better word, positive occult, if you may.
True.
So, sir, welcome back to the Ranveer Show again.
Always a pleasure. Har Har Mahadev.
Har Har Mahadev.
Alak Niranjan.
Alak Niranjan. That's one thing I picked up from the book.
I'll tell you one thing that when I meet somebody who is as excited, if not more, about the occult and the Aghoris and the exciting realms beyond the typical aspects of spirituality, then I'm most happy. Because, sometimes spirituality can get, if I can use the word, boring.
Yeah, for sure.
Today, my young friends who are watching this, I have to tell them, because I'm 48, just for clarification.
You look like 2 years older than me.
Now, I have to mention this because I was 28 once upon a time. And when I was 24 and I met my guru, if I can mention his name, Swami Sadyojata Shankarashram, at 24. What I learned was, and before we dive into Aghori, just to tell you, is what I learned and I observed is that spiritual exercise or spiritual progression, has to be exciting. And I remember Swamiji, as I would address, and I address him even now, used to say, Mast raho. And the message was, don't make spirituality very boring and very dry. There are some people I come across, if it's like, for example, it's Sanchit, one of our friends here. If I say, and he's like supposedly very much into spirituality, and I'm, hey Sanchit, how are you? And he's like, yeah, I'm good. Have you come across these people? They want you to feel that something is like amazing. This guy's like, oh my God, he's spiritual, man. Why? He's so serious. And my guru would always say, Mast raho. Our guru would take us on a trek and etc. The point is that when I, got to explore the explosive aspects about Aghoris, it got me excited to just know that they are one of those examples of how spirituality can be not just very tough and challenging, it can be exciting as well.
There's a part of the book in one of the later chapters. Okay, I'm gonna give the listeners a bit of an insight on the book. So the book is about a character who ends up first meeting Aghori sadhus,
Yeah.
who villagers fear.
Yeah.
Then he kind of lives with them for a bit, and he experiences their life for a bit. Eventually, he meets people called Maha Aghoris, which are a slightly more evolved version of Aghoris, an older sect.
Sure.
And eventually, he meets what people may refer to as maybe a Rishi Muni.
Kind of. Yes.
A sage who's a sadhu who's been meditating for 5,000 years in the Himalayas.
Yes. Yes.
And that sadhu actually mentions that Aghori culture is way older than most recorded human history.
Absolutely.
And that's what a lot of people fail to understand. We had Abhijit Chavda on the show, incredible historian. He's spoken about how the Rig Veda is probably the oldest written text in the world, and we can date it back to at least 10,000 years.
Correct.
But when you actually get into the depths of Indian culture, you realize, wait, this has probably gone on way longer than 10,000 years. Ancient Egyptians actually used to consider themselves modern.
Right.
Like, the Egyptians we read about just 2,000 years ago, they think that they were the modern successors of an even more ancient race, which was, say, 50,000, 60,000 BC's time period. So I'm sure Indian culture has gone back to 50,000, 60,000 BC. The issue with Indian history is that the governments, since independence, they've never funded archaeology in India. That's why India has so much lost history that we don't even know of.
Absolutely.
And some of those answers are found when you actually study deep Aghori culture. Say if you're lucky enough to meet a Rishi Muni in your life.
Absolutely.
If you're lucky enough to meet one of those sages who've been meditating for centuries, perhaps in the Himalayas.
True.
So, I'd like to ask you, sir, about this origins of Aghori culture. Where do you think it began? And I know that you're someone who's interacted with Aghoris himself. I know you're someone who studies Indian culture in detail. Let's juice out all that knowledge, sir.
Let's extract as much as possible.
Yes.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm so happy that you're putting such questions, because one thing is true that we need more archaeological explorations. We need more research. We need more interactions. We need more connections with these sages. Let me start by telling you that it's I've not known the person, but I know of certain sages who are perceived, who are understood to be ageless. Here we are talking about 10,000 years, 50,000 years, and there are those entities who have no age. So if you see in the book, there is that interaction that Subbu, the protagonist, he has with that particular Rishi Muni beneath that temple, and he's been meditating. So he explains how he's able to live for that long. And it's also therefore about yoga. Okay, so when I'm responding to your question, Ranveer, I am giving you different dimensions of it's not just a one-track answer. I'm sharing different perspectives, and then it'll all coagulate towards, hopefully answering your question.
Can I just add one point? When we use the word yoga, you and me probably are talking about the same thing. Yoga is a way of life. Yoga is a way of thinking. Yoga is a way of how you perceive the world around you.
No, I'm not talking about that.
I'll just add it for the listeners.
Sure.
When people hear the word yoga, they automatically think, oh, asanas, bending your body in a certain way. But actually, yoga means union.
Absolutely.
And in more layman's terms, one thing I've understood about yoga, and it's not just asanas, it's everything, lifestyle, the way you think, how the way you treat people. It unlocks the potential of your own body, mind, and soul.
Exactly.
Which is what people fail to understand. So, there are skeptics, there are men of science who think that when we talk about Rishi Munis who live for centuries, we are feeding into pseudoscience. But science has a lot to discover, even going forward. And probably in the next 10, 20 years, we've just begun to discover the power of pranayama, the power of yoga nidra in the world of science.
Absolutely.
And so much is left.
To just add a little value to your intriguing point, is when I was doing my research for Aghori and Untold Story, it was not just narrowed to only Aghoris, right? I wanted to know the world of sadhus, and then specifically a little bit on Aghoris. While doing that, do you know in Rig Veda, there is one particular tenet, or there's one particular text which talks about Viman Shastra. which means the science of building spacecrafts. And then you get connected to the stories related to Ramayana, Mahabharata, where there are certain aspects of the story where, Ravana comes in a pushpak, in a vimana,
Flying chariot.
flying chariot. So imagine that we here talk about science and we talk about aeronautical engineering. And in Rig Veda there is a text which talks about that, and Rig Veda is thousands of years old. So are you understanding where we are and what? So there are people who say, and I believe in that, is where science ends, spirituality begins. But because we do not know doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
And even science begins in your mind first. If you're able to create something with your mind, that's how you're actually able to chase scientific proof. Any scientific proof is found out that way.
Absolutely.
It's found out first through hypothesis, found out first through creativity, imagination.
Correct.
And then you chase it using research and experiments.
Absolutely. And see, listen, I'm not an expert or a scientist or anything. I have just opened myself to receiving the aspects related to yoga. So you really wonderfully explained and elucidated what yoga is. What I was talking about was something more specific related to, which comes in the book, is pranayama. So there are some people who are able to hold their breath. So hum usko, we call it in Sanskrit kumbhaka. Puraka, kumbhaka, rechaka is what. Now I'm not a yoga expert, but whatever little that I've understood is you can master it to such an extent that you can hold your breath for a long time. And I'm making it subjective. I'm not going to put a number to it. You may have come across somebody who is a swimmer, and you'll find that his or her ability to hold the breath could be for a few minutes. Can we do it? So it's all about how we train our body and our breathing. And then, of course, at a more holistic, from that point of view, it helps to live a more beautiful life. No doubt about it.
Yeah. So I got to bring you back to that guru of Tadamba, basically.
Yes.
The sage you were talking about in the Himalayas. And that's why I interrupted and I brought in the whole yoga aspect of things.
Yeah.
Is there someone who inspired that particular character in the book? The character who's lived for like all these millennia?
I have not met the person in real, but I know of, like when I interacted with a couple of Aghoris through a contact of mine, I was told of certain advanced Aghoris. Now, let me be very honest to say that in the book, I have put the name Maha Aghoris because there has to be a differentiation. Okay, otherwise they're Aghoris. And they're different, even in their physiology, they're different. And that's true. Some of them are advanced even in the way they are. Okay. And they have reached certain levels of yoga by which they can control their breath and increase their age.
Increase the lifespan.
The lifespan. So they say that typically a human being has a n number of breaths, and if you increase the duration of breathing, you'll increase the lifespan, is what they say. So some of these Maha Aghoris have mastered the ability to hold their breath. That's why I was focusing a little bit more on the breathing part. Okay. Have you heard of this concept called Hatha Yoga?
Yeah.
Okay. Hatha means what? Stubbornness. Hatti hai. Marathi we say hatti. No? So Hatha is I will do it. So Aghoris, I wouldn't call them Hatha yogis, but they practice an aspect, these Maha Aghoris, an aspect of Hatha yoga where they do that tapasya by which they can hold their breath for a very long time. Okay. And I wouldn't say that the Aghori I spoke to specifically mentioned that there is an Aghori who's lived for 5,000 years or 10,000 years, etc. Like I said, some things have been reimagined to basically drive a point across that Aghoris also meditate. Aghoris also do their yoga. They just don't sit on a funeral pyre in a cremation ground and sit like madmen. No, they don't. That's only a part that is seen. There are many parts which are not seen. And when I went to meet these Aghoris as well, like I said earlier, it's not about trying to get them to, give a pose or, extract them on a video and then put it. If you're honestly keen, they'll tell you a few things. There are some things that they will not. For example, what I found out is they're initiated into mantra japa as well. Okay? Jaise, I've been initiated. as a sadhaka, as a student, a guru initiates, they're also initiated. And they're also sent to a cremation ground with certain things that they have to do, which we may think, aise baith ke kuch kar rahe hain. But they have certain structures. They practice certain sadhanas for years together. And I think it is important for the viewers to understand that and not completely get caught on to the fact that they only eat this and they only do that. There's so much more. So this is what I wanted to talk about with respect to those yogis, these Maha Aghoris, who have mastered the ability to extend their life. And why do they do that? I mean, the viewers may wonder why. Because they want to attain Shivatva, the merging with Shiva. So they have two choices. One is take a rebirth, again be born. Otherwise, extend your life. But then when they extend the life, it's not like they get old and stuff. That's where the yoga helps them. You meet any yogi or any person who's been practicing yoga for a long time, you will find that their general energy is high. Their aura is different. Even their physicality is different.
Yeah.
Some people do look much younger than their age.
No, for real. And that's one thing I wanted to bring up, that yoga definitely changes the way you look.
I was talking about myself. Just kidding.
I'm talking about you as well, sir. But generally, I've observed that people who are proper practitioners of yogic lifestyles, and I'm not just talking about the asanas, I'm talking about the overall life, eating right, breathing right, practicing pranayam, they just look different.
Can I just add something here? As you were saying this, it flowed into my mind. Some people think that when you look at an Aghori, if you see this, the face, right? If you see this face, it's a bit scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bhasma hai. But there is a lot of karuna as well.
What is karuna?
Love. Which, if you see the eyes, you'll feel that. I have seen and I've heard of Aghoris when they complete a kriya as in a sankalp. And I had to say this to you. So I've seen this Aghori, when he completes the kriya, out of his joy that he's finished what the Guru has told him to do in that smashan bhumi, tears are rolling down, actually. And he's like, Avak! Niranjan. It's an acceleration. I've completed it. There is an element of joy. So they are not completely emotionless, or some people think they're only angry people. Are bapre, Aghori. Are bapre, if you go there with a wrong intent, if you go there to just to surrender yourself and be there in the presence, they will be the nicest people as well.
They're happy to share knowledge.
Of course they are. In fact, I think if we go with the right intent, whatever they can share, they will share.
One thing I want to ask you is the physiological changes that you spoke about. Like, even when you've spoken about the Maha Aghoris in this book, the higher level of Aghoris. I mean, I am going to reveal one detail here. You've revealed how they were much taller than the average person.
Right.
And you're not the first spiritual person that's spoken to me about taller individuals. And when I'm saying tall, it's not 6'3". It is 8 feet, 9 feet tall. I actually was talking to someone who we just spoke about before this podcast.
Yes.
I don't want to name the person.
Sure.
Because the person's sort of like famous. He told me that on one of his spiritual expeditions in the Himalayas, deep into the Himalayas, when he went on this deep trek, there was a moment where they were camping on sort of a mountaintop. They were on their way to their location. I think they were going to the lakes, which are said to be the last place that the Pandavas were at in this realm.
Correct.
You know the story about how the Pandavas in the Mahabharata,
yes.
how they die out. They walk up to a certain mountain.
Correct.
And then on the way to the top, one of them dies at a time.
Right.
So he was going up to the final lake where it is said that Yudhishthir passed away. So on the way to that lake, they stopped. They were camping. He said that it was so cold there that most of them slept by 7 p.m. At around 11 p.m. or 12 a.m., he woke up because he needed to use the washroom. But there's no washroom around, so you're supposed to like do your thing in nature. So while he was like basically urinating, he in a distance he saw these really tall figures, 9 feet tall, 10 feet tall. While he was telling me the story, he said that I've never told too many people this story because it seems crazy. But they were wearing darker robes. They were also walking in the same path of that particular location.
True.
And the only reason he brought it up was because I was telling him about your book.
Okay.
I was telling him about the Maha Aghoris and how they were
Yes.
8 feet tall, 9 feet tall.
Yes. Yes.
First question to you is that have you ever encountered people like that who are physiologically different? And secondly, what specifically makes them physiologically so different according to you?
Okay. Let me start by disappointing you with one answer, which is that I'm not allowed to reveal a few things.
No, sure, okay. No, it doesn't disappoint us.
Yeah,
That's perfectly
because
fine.
when I met these two Aghoris, they revealed to me while they were talking to me about Maha Aghoris. When I say Maha Aghoris, those who are advanced. They told me a few things about them, and in fact, how I can't cross this
Sure,
line
sure.
because
No problem, sir.
But I can say one thing, that there are these entities. I'll give you a very simple example. If you go to China, for example, you'll find that the height of the Chinese on an average is a little shorter, right? You go to Europe, you'll find that Europeans are typically taller. I hope you agree with me, right? Because Europeans, Germans,
Yeah.
very tall. So different places on earth, you'll also have, if you go to Africa, there are these tribes in the savannas. They're very tall, 6 feet, and they're very lanky, tall and lanky. In the Himalayas, there are certain monks who are, and that's probably why the person you're referring to must have had that encounter. I did have an encounter, but not in the Himalayas. But again, I cannot reveal more because it was given to me as a way to see them at a point in time. But I can tell you one thing, that there are these people who are physiologically different, okay? And they will not make themselves seen. So you might even be there in the location, but you may not see them. Who will see them are people who are very advanced, who have reached a point in their sadhana where they will not be all that stuff.
Got it.
Imagine if I were to actually see without any background, I'll just fall, I'll faint to see an 8-footer or a 9-footer, these people. So, but there are. And let me go one step beyond. When I was at Kailash Mansarovar, and I haven't really shared this I can share. It's not about the entities, but I can tell you one thing, that, people ask me sometimes, do you believe in aliens and all? I say, I've seen alien beings at the Manasarovar. When I went with my guru, there was one point where I was seated on the banks of Manasarovar, and there were others who went back to the tents. And this was something I've kept because sometimes I'll be called crazy for that. The good part is I'm already crazy, so I'm okay with that. But I saw these twinkling lights, okay? And they were not like the lights coming out of a spaceship or something. They were these stars, twinkling stars, very close to the lake. And I told you even offline that you should go to Manasarovar to just feel the alienish aspects there. And I saw some of them literally dropping into the water. Now, to me, it is as unbelievably amazing as me. Like I said, I can't share too much, but about those beings, those 8 feet, 9 feet people. And there are these dimensions, Ranveer, which are much beyond our intellectual abilities to understand.
Yeah.
And for the fear of being misunderstood as crazy or kuch satak gaya hai, some of us, we don't talk about it. Here I'm sharing it in the context that yes, there are these people who are advanced, who meditate only, and their entire purpose of living is very different. You meet any sannyasi, any yogi, you will not, unless you're spiritually bent, you will not connect with the person.
Yeah. So because you're into so much spiritual study, I'm going to ask you something for which I know your answer, but I'll still ask you to bring it up in this particular podcast. I've been beginning to read the Gita lately. And there was this one part of the Gita I read where they spoke about lower beings than yourself, which is animals, because they don't have a sense of consciousness. They kind of run their life by instinct. So that's a lower form of life. Then there's equal life, like human beings. And then there are also higher life forms, which you may not be able to perceive. Because you're still evolving. People need to understand even God is a creature that's still evolving.
Of course.
So what do you think of these higher beings around us? Because I'm sure that spiritual progress in the long term does unlock certain facilities in your head. In the same way that one of the siddhis or superpowers of long term meditation or yoga is that you become calmer, your focus increases. There's science that backs all that.
Sure.
Why?
Absolutely.
Because only lately has research been started in those fields. Probably in the last 20 years, people have discovered meditation. Now all of America is talking about it. CEOs are talking about, yeah, I have to meditate. I have to get my meditation in. I have to do my transcendental meditation. Because
Absolutely.
that's what cultural
Power
hype-
yoga,
Yeah.
today's like I'm just getting into power yoga, and though it sounds a little like hey, but they it's touched them as well.
Imagine how much more there is for science to discover. And they say that everyone has a god, but they just call it different names. And for some people, science is God. And that's fine. That's fine. But don't limit yourself to your perception of the world created simply by scientific proof, experiments, and research, because that's an ongoing process. And the best scientists, and we've had scientists on the show,
Sure.
the best scientists are always the best children as well. The children inside them are still alive, and they're first imagining the science before they're going chasing it. So keeping all this in mind, sir, I want to ask you about those higher beings. Like, because you have so much spiritual study, and I'm something tells me you even ask those Aghoris about higher beings.
Two things. One, there are higher beings, 101%. And why I say that is because, like, we are in our journey towards evolving spiritually, Ranveer. There are these people who have, obviously, it's like, karate. We join karate, martial arts, and we start with the white belt, then whatever, yellow, green. Look at it that way. So we are all into karate. Now, there are some who are not into karate. You talked about animals. There are some humans who are also low beings. When I say low beings, not in an insulting way. They do not understand how important it is to maybe do a little meditation, etc. Then come us. We understand. We are practicing. We are probably reached the green belt of martial arts. You're talking about the black belts. And then there are dans. If you've done karate, I did a little bit. So you have this first dan after black belt. I remember you interviewed a Shaolin master, for example. They reach. So that way there are beings. Now, the beautiful part about this, Ranveer, is you can see them in different forms. Now, you may wonder, what am I talking about? You may see them, Ranveer, in forms which are really exciting. Like, wow, they'll be in an orange robe. When you see, you'll feel the aura. So they're called swamis or yogis. They're higher beings. Now, there are beings even higher than that who don't even need a physical form. But can we understand that? We can't, because their vibrations are too advanced for us. Can we feel the frequency of a bat, which uses its sound as an echo to see? Imagine the science in that, isn't it? So sometimes I feel they're also pretty high beings, because they're look at the whales, how they communicate from beneath the water. I'm bringing these dimensions, Ranveer, for the viewers only because there's so much that we don't know. So there are higher beings. Because of their spiritual powers, they don't even need a physical body. And you come, and they're called astral beings. So when you go to places like Himalayas, you come across these astral beings if you're tuned to it. So if I say to my friends or people like you who I meet is, if you have even the slightest spiritual bent, then please go to Kailash, Mansarovar. There could be other places, but since I've been there, you will feel certain vibrations. Ranveer, my life transformed while I was there.
You're not the first person on this podcast to say that.
So just imagine. And I say this with complete honesty, that when I came back, and I'm not trying to project anything, I'm telling you factually, I started painting. I started writing poetry, for God's sake. I used to fail in English in school. I started writing. Something opened up. And enjoying that with the fact that I was initiated into mantra japa by my guru, long time back. So what I'm trying to tell you, Ranveer, is that the evolution of a person, as you very beautifully said, from, say, the lower being, the normal being like us, the higher being, and then there are beings, and then there are aliens who are advanced. If you read the book towards the end, there's Subbu, the protagonist, is sitting at a lake in the Himalayas towards the end, okay? And that Maha Aghoris sitting beside him, and he sees this, a light. And the Maha Aghoris says, I think this Aghori is now, he's coming in. And let me be very frank with you, though people may find it, they'll get intrigued, and I want them to, is there are certain higher beings who can even travel from earth to other places, or there are beings who have traveled from other places to earth. And it's a different realm, which for me creates a supreme excitement.
Yeah, same.
And if I can say this at the risk of, again, sounding a little negative, but for me, or to me, death is not something that I would, and don't feel I'm arrogant, I'm just saying very factually, death doesn't, for me, mean it's sorrow.
Yeah, same.
Death is only a process where the soul, for whatever reason, decides that I've had, I'm done with it. I need to go to into another body or into another realm. I personally feel that when my time comes, I only pray that it happens peacefully. Because when it happens, it's when the negotiations take place between the soul and the higher force. I can't control that. But whenever it happens, I hope that I don't have to come back here. I get a chance to explore another planet. Because it is true that we are not the only place in this universe which has life. There are places beyond, and there are therefore beings of different spiritual advancements. When I say spiritual, they know so much more about life. You know what we think? Oh my God, he levitates. Oh my God. For somebody, they are just walking in air all the time. What you said earlier, right? Long time back, people would have said, "Are you crazy? Planes? Come on. Oh, ye to nahi hota hai." This is not hundreds of years ago. Today, there are, different kinds of planes. Today, we think, spiritually speaking, oh, he can sit in meditation for so many hours. Well, somebody somewhere else at a higher level, for them, sitting for a year in meditation is nothing, because they lose track of time. They don't understand. See, we think it's 1 hour. A question which I want to put to you is, who has decided the distance between the 2 seconds?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not putting this as an
No,
arrogant
no.
question. I actually want to know. Between 1 and 2, there's a distance, right? 1 tick tick 2. Why is it 1 tick tick 2? Why not 1 tick tick 2? Or why not 1 tick tick 2? What if there's an hour between the 2 seconds? So when you go beyond, when you get into certain spiritual realms, time and space, they're not the same as what it is here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It may be pleasantly complicated as we're speaking about this, but these are the beautiful explorations that actually motivated me to, write about all this. Yeah.
Even the world of astrophysics has not figured out time at all. And they've just created this entity called time for the sake of convenience for all the other equations. In terms of, okay, here's this one thing, we don't know what it means, we don't know the nature of it, but we're going to use it while proving the other aspects of the universe.
Absolutely. When I met my guru, when I was with my guru, it was my birthday. It was the 12th of Feb, and 13th is my birthday. So 12th at 12 a.m., my guru, I was, I think, 29 that time. And it was 12:30 in the morning a.m. There was a beautiful diya lit. And I was given the freedom to ask questions. When I say freedom, it was just like, okay, because you just can't ask anything to the guru, right? You just are pleasantly you have to hold yourself. But so Swamiji just sort of opened up and said, so tell me, what do you want to talk about? Generally, this is at 12:30 in the morning. Huh? And I asked whether are there miracles? And I'm 29, I'm excited. So the answer was beautiful. The answer was this. Swamiji said, there are miracles, of course. But he asked me, do you know what is the most amazing miracle? So it was a retrospective question. I was just waiting. He said, life is a miracle. And it was a statement pregnant with a lot of meaning and depth, Ranveer. What it meant is, today, do we still know? What creates the life, that consciousness that comes out? Yes, the biological aspect is one thing, but why are we living this life? Yeah. What is our purpose? Though it sounds, again, a little boring, jaded, maybe why, but it's a great question to figure out, and spirituality could be the answer to that.
As a listener of this podcast, look at the phone that you're consuming this podcast on. What is this phone? what is this weird box? Why do you have 10 fingers? Like, then these are questions I've had in my head since I'm a 4-year-old. And around the time I was 4 or 5, I also saw Ripley's Believe It or Not, where I got introduced to Aghoris. And then,
Really?
yeah. And I mean, since that age, I have been thinking about Aghoris. And only at the age of 28 have I discovered your work, have I discovered further research on this subject of Aghoris. So,
Do you know, by the way, Aghoris ka matlab kya hai? What does Aghori mean? So, for the viewers as well, Aghori, Aghori ka matlab, it means he or she, because there are female Aghoris as well and male Aghoris as well. He or she who is fearless. Ghor, Aghor, in Sanskrit, there's something called Sandhi Vikshep. You break the word and you can get the meaning. Ghor is bhaya, fear. Aghor, the one who doesn't fear. That is why they don't fear. And I relate it to the fact that when they do sadhana, their sadhana is tough, but they don't fear it.
what do you mean?
They are told to go to the Smashan Bhumi and sit there in the night.
The graveyard.
The graveyard, which is supposed to be the hotbed for paranormal activity, because mana jata hai, and to some extent true. That's another subject. So would I go to, suppose I'm doing my japa, you tell me, Mayur, you know what, let's go to the graveyard, yeah, and sit there in the cremation ground and meditate, just like Aghoris. I won't, yeah. I mean, I can't just sit there. It's too, because of the fear.
Why do you think the graveyard or the Mashan Ghat is so powerful? Because again, I've heard people say meditation in graveyards is like more intense, etc., etc. Again, even I've been meditating for years now. I'd also be scared to like enter a graveyard and meditate, because I mean, certain channels open up in your mind and body when you are meditating. And again, what you've read theoretically in the past, like what I've read theoretically in the past, is that your body's kind of like an open tube. Sometimes it can become an open tube while you're meditating, and you don't want things to enter your body.
So it's a tradition followed by Aghoris for thousands of years. There's one school of thought, which I told you earlier, is that it is said that even Dattatreya is a representation of an Aghori.
Which is my one of my childhood influences.
So it is said that. Now, this is through whatever I read. But the question is, why do they go to the cremation ground especially? And no other sect of sadhus do that, right? Even Naga sadhus don't do that. What I got to hear when I interacted with these people is, there are again two things. One, that's the place where there is complete detachment from anything around. You look at anything else, there's something or the other. Like even you look at a beautiful temple or a cave, still there is nature even Mother Nature can sort of, to some extent, pull you towards it. In a Smashan Bhumi, everything is dead. And that is where they feel the highest intensity of the sadhana that they do. This is one answer to the question. The other is a little paranormal, which is that it is said that in a place where the people who are dead, they're left to, sort of leave the body. As in, they already left the body, but the body gets cremated. The graveyard or the Smashan Bhumi, cremation ground, is also has entities which we can't feel. See, listen, Ranveer, when we go to a Smashan Bhumi, there is an aspect within us which also feels something, which is why we fear it, okay? Which we can't explain. These Aghoris actually can, and it is said they connect and they absorb learnings and with certain beings, and they strengthen their own sadhana. So these are two answers. For me, one is very practical, which is the fact that they don't get disturbed. कौन जाएगा रात को उनको disturb करने के लिए? Nobody will venture. So they can completely, totally isolate themselves and focus. It's like the highest level of meditation. But Aghori, they don't fear. We won't be able to do that because all we will be thinking about is everything around us. So that is the main reason I think they go they live there. There are Aghoris who live there as well. Because there are years that they have to meditate. And one more thing I want to tell you, Ranveer, because we are on this subject, is you will never see an Aghori practicing miracles. Because miracles are the puncture to the filled up tire.
Got it. As in, it takes a certain amount of spiritual energy to perform a miracle.
Yeah, they don't want to waste it. It's like, again, the cobra. I spoke in my earlier podcast, right? A cobra will never, by the way, you know that, right? A cobra, many people die of cobra bite when there's no venom that has been injected. It's a dry bite. But they die out of shock. The cobras do not want to waste their venom. Now, that's the cobra part. I associate an Aghori like a cobra in the sense they're very focused. Their eyes are very penetrating. They may create fear in you. But they will never, ever, from what I have researched, demonstrate or try to show off these strengths that they have. What we know is from what we have perceived, we've heard. And maybe when you or I meet them in person and without any videos and all, they'll probably reveal something. So the person I met, he blessed me with, he did this, and he just blessed me with something, which I can't, again, talk to you about. He put a tika on me and blessed me. Now, I'm not there to assess and say, has it worked and all. It's a blessing. But they will not, even if I tell them, they will not show other things, because for them, it's an effort. And it's a leaking of their spiritual energy. They only want to merge with Shiva. That's why they don't want to do anything with the world. You'll not see Aghoris anywhere walking here and there. You'll not see a lot of Aghoris in Kumbh Mela as well. Yeah. You might see a few. You'll see more of these Naga sadhus.
Yeah. From reading this book, as I told you in the last podcast, every chapter has something scary, something occult, something paranormal, and at the end of it, there's a positive energy. Yeah. You said something positive about what the Aghori said to the protagonist.
Yeah.
Every chapter kind of leaves you with certain amount of positivity.
Yeah.
There's a chapter, in fact, where the protagonist interacts with sloth bears, wild bears in Indian jungles, which I found very captivating. But again, very positive energy book in general.
Because these Aghoris are so fearless that, and also remember one more thing, that when a person reaches a higher level of spiritual meditation or spiritual whatever sadhana that person is doing, they also knowingly or unknowingly develop a strength to connect with beings not only high but even lower beings.
You mean animals?
Yeah. So I have seen, I won't name, of course, very advanced level famous sadhu who conducts a lot of sermons, seen that person with a king cobra. No fear. But not only just no fear, they're able to also connect.
Yeah.
So that's why this sloth bear का वही है कि bear का कि वो ये नहीं करता है कि ऐसा नहीं है. The Subbu, the protagonist, gets a little scared, but so that's the aspect that I wanted to bring out.
Yeah, every single podcast we record has an underlying message or an underlying tone. And often the most intense podcasts which have the greatest impact on me, the underlying message is always humility.
Isn't it?
Stay humble. If you want to achieve this kind of greatness, stay humble.
Right.
If you want to achieve this kind of spiritual growth, stay humble.
The interesting part, Ranveer, is there will be temptations for some of us or many of us to feel arrogance. Temptations are there.
All the time.
Because it's easy when people praise you or they make, from their point of view, they're not doing anything wrong. They make you feel like you're amazing. Yeah. And it's very easy to feel, I am. But that's where spirituality comes. That's where meditation helps. That's where introspection helps. You know what I have learned is, with the blessings, if I am praised for something, I immediately, in my mind, place it at my guru's feet.
Yeah, 100%.
That burden is gone.
100%.
Because then the humility retains.
Yeah. Got a tattoo that says Philippians 4:13. It's a quote from the Bible which says that I can do all things through him who gives me strength. Because anything you've achieved is not your own.
Yes.
It's not an outcome of your actions.
Yes.
Even the motivation to do those actions has come from an external place.
In fact, to just extend your point, I have a tattoo similar in my brain. It's been tattooed in my brain. Honestly. I love tattoos, by the way.
Yeah, I can see.
This is just to divert a little bit, this is what I heard Swamiji say, and it sort of just opened up a different world in my mind. I was 24, and it goes, Sarvam sada shiva sahasvamama paradham magnam samudhara mahatyamuma padabdhau sarvatmana tava padambujameva dina swaminananya sharana Sharanangatosmi Swaminananya Sharanangatosmi. That means anything you do, just surrender at the Guru here.
Yeah.
Be honest and say, yes, this is what I am. Please help me. If I need help, total surrender. And I think this tattoo in my brain is whenever I say something and it's positive about me, always say with the blessings.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it is with the Guru's blessings and my parents' blessings a lot. And I think that's where you come from as well, when you spoke about your tattoo.
Yeah, crazy conversation, sir.
There are some conversations which are, when you have intense conversations, you feel drained out, because it pulls. But here, frankly speaking, it's exhilarating.
Yeah.
It's exciting because so much is getting discussed. And I think even for the viewers, Ranveer, I feel, I'm hoping and I feel that they're getting something interesting to at least think about.
Yeah,
Something
it's
different.
it's thought fodder,
Thought fodder, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I call it. Like the best podcast will always give you thought fodder. The best podcasts are supposed to make you think, are supposed to stay with you after it's done. So which brings me to a sort of private podcast you have had in your own life with those Aghori sadhus you came across.
Yeah,
I have to ask you,
sure.
and this is the last section of our episode right now. What questions did you ask them?
Oh, I'll be more than happy to share it. I'm not sure if I can share all the answers.
Yeah, sure.
But I can always put up the inquisitive, the aspect that came out when I was with him.
I'm also highlighting this because in my conversations with sadhus, whenever I've had them in the Himalayas, in life, those have been the most memorable conversations of my life. So I'm sure this was one of the most memorable moments of your life in general.
Absolutely. See, the first thing I'll say is that I didn't over prepare because I was overexcited, but probably because of this underlying genuine intent to know. The questions were already getting formed in my mind, in my consciousness, if I can put it that way. It was not a reporter asking questions, right? It was there. So a few questions I did. Let me be very open with you about this. I didn't actually have to ask multitude of questions. Sometimes these, like when I was with them, you ask them one and they start answering a lot more as though they're aware of the next few questions. I started by just putting a simple question is, why do you meditate in the Smashan Bhumi? Like, what is it that you find interesting, which you asked me earlier? Because I used to always get intrigued that they're the only people who go to a place where it's all typically negative. Kaun jata hai? So that's when he told me these two things is, and in their own way, they're these, mostly they're North Indians, right? From that side, UP side, they hail from there. So in their Hindi, quite abrasive Hindi, they told me that उनको सुकून वहाँ पे मिलता है. Sukoon as in they feel more at peace when they're in the crematorium, at the cremation ground. Then they said something which I can only reveal something where they can connect with energies there. तो ये सब हिंदी में वो कह रहे थे. And the contact who was with me, some of the words I couldn't understand. So he later on sort of, he clarified. The other thing I asked was, so I'm not elaborating too much on it because I've already explained to you. But that was my question, why? The first thing was the intrigue, why the Smashan Bhumi? The other thing was I wanted to know that why do they, is it true that they actually eat and drink alcohol? Initially, there was a little bit of an aggression.
They got irritated?
Yeah, they got irritated. They got a little, rather he got a little upset because I had two encounters. I'm talking about one where I was able to ask more questions. And I was scared because let me tell you, when you're in front of an Aghori, they command so much of, I wouldn't say they're intimidating, but their personality is so strong. And that's why I say that because of their meditation, they're so strong, they know what they're doing. We don't know what they're doing. So we may think, wo kya aise baithe, but they are. So when when I put this question, they were a little, he was, when I say they, I'm saying this in respect, they. But I think because of the contact, again, and because I wasn't really trying to, click any pictures or trying to record and all. That's when he opened up rather and said that हमें कुछ मतलब मांस खाने में मज़ा नहीं आता है, हम ऐसे खा लेते हैं, जब भी भूख लगती है तो खा लेते हैं. And Ranveer, a lot of times such answers are not direct. They make you think later on. What do you mean भूख लगती है? तो मतलब they only eat to survive. When I said to you earlier or in the earlier podcast as well, उनका survival के लिए. And then when he saw that I was genuinely listening and trying to understand, he went to the extent of saying that कभी कभी ऐसे भी हम खा लेते हैं जो एक यंग पर्सन का होता है. अभी हिंदी में ही said that word. तो वो खाने से भी हमें हमारी साधना बढ़ती है. So that was another spiritual aspect which I wasn't aware of. Ranveer, many times we listen to others and we make our own assumptions, presumptions, convictions as well. But when this came directly, I knew this is what it is. Again, remember, this is one school of Aghori. There are maybe other schools, I don't know. Typically, this is one school. But, okay, the other thing is, because I'm a Shiva, sorry, you were saying.
What about the alcohol also?
Well, they do. But they don't drink what he said, because I asked him. And I'm paraphrasing it. Like, I'm trying to, explain what he said. Is that they don't drink again because they enjoy a drink in the evening and all. कभी मूड आ गया, कभी कोई ला के देता है तो हम पी सकते हैं, उसमें क्या है, हमें कुछ होता नहीं है. So for them, it is almost like an outlandish way of saying that it doesn't matter. For them, food is consuming so that they get some nutrition or they live. Okay, they don't want to kill anything, so they eat what is already dead. They drink alcohol, not they drink every day. They're crazy. No, they don't. But if you say, like, chalo, hum bhi pee lete hain, usme kya hai? They drink the whole bottle. Now, I have not seen them drink, but I've seen it on a video. They have. Now, that part, again, sometimes gets over-glorified. Aghori peete hain. They just have, for them, that doesn't matter, yeah. What matters is the sadhana. That part, which is alcohol, is so much presented to the world that this is what Aghoris are. That's what I don't like, which is why I don't talk much about the alcohol. Even while I'm explaining this, I'm reluctantly explaining, because yes, they do. But is that what they only do? No, that's maybe 5%. It's not like, let's open a scotch, let's have a drink and all. They don't do that.
What do you think most of the time goes into sadhana, meditation?
Only that. They apply bhasma. When they wake up, they will go, they'll, pani nikalte hain, fir they'll apply, they put water, they'll apply the bhasma. Okay, there are some kriyas they do. Some hand mudras they do. तो ये किसको पता है? हम सिर्फ वही देखते हैं जो बस वो इतना नहीं है. They do certain kriyas. See, they also have their own philosophy about life. So how we perceive life, they don't. अभी ये मुझे क्वेश्चन से नहीं मिला. वो जनरल जो भी बात करते हैं तो दे एक्सटेंड समटाइम्स, जैसे अभी कॉन्वर्सेशन में रणवीर, आई एम एक्सटेंडिंग माई कॉन्वर्सेशन, दे एक्सटेंड समटाइम्स. सो व्हाट दे ऑल्सो सेड इज दैट फॉर देम देयर outlook to life is not how we look at life. And that came as almost like an education to me. As if I'm the student he was telling me. He was much more... The question on alcohol and food got him a little upset. But because of the contact, he understood that, chalo bacha yaar, chhod do. Stupid guy is asking all these questions. But then he talked about the way he or Aghoris look at life is only and only through the prism of enlightenment and Shiva. And then it was again for me to then relate it that, yes, because what else do they do? I have not seen them anywhere else. They are just, they're in their realm. And they're all they're saying is, let me be, man. You guys chill, let me also chill. If I can put it that way.
Yeah, no. I think
And one thing is, these interactions, though I have not told a lot of people, only because, see, this is a great platform where I can share. Would I be comfortable sharing it with some people who have come home for dinner? I can't. Would I be able to share it with people I'm going out for a nice dinner or a lunch? I think they will just put me aside, metaphorically. Here, I think it's only because, Ranveer, this is a podcast about something which is to do with the life of an Aghori. And that's the reason, Ranveer, I wanted to, I wouldn't say expose, but bring out these dimensions about Aghoris, who are lovely people, but not lovely in the way we would want them to be.
Yeah.
Hello, how are you? Come na, and all that. Na. They are different. Even Guru Shishya mein aise hota hai. Even normally also. Guru never says come and all. Guru will give you gyan, he'll guide you.
Yeah.
And that affection is different.
Yeah. The lowest form of pleasures are material pleasures. When you buy something, you feel great about it. Slightly higher than that are physical pleasures, where you make your body feel nice in a certain way, food or sex.
Sure.
Higher than that is intellectual pleasures, which is learning what we are doing
Sure.
right now.
Sure.
And the highest form of pleasure is, of course, spiritual.
Sure.
And this is what most people fail to understand, that you can't even imagine the kind of pleasure your soul feels
True.
when you chase certain spiritual processes, when you put it through certain spiritual processes.
True.
And this is what the modern world fails to sort of understand about Aghoris or sadhus or Naga Babas or just people who are spiritually advanced. And I'm hoping that this particular episode has highlighted the concept of spiritual pleasures for the average person, average listener.
Absolutely. I only want to say that, listen, we have our all pleasures in the chronology that you mentioned, right? Material, physical, sexual, carnal, etc., etc. As we live our lives, Ranveer, as the way we are, even the fact that we are talking like this about a subject like this, and excitedly, albeit so, is a great, it's a great thing for us.
Yeah.
And there are so many viewers who are also like that. And maybe sometimes such kind of podcasts will act as a catalyst for them to strengthen the spiritual realm. My point is, as we live this way, the way we are, working, having a business, we'll have a drink maybe, or we'll go on a party, we'll build our, biceps, we'll have, a youngster will have a date. That is part of life. So this is not about wo sab chodo. That may happen. If it happens, it'll happen on its own. Like Aghoris, they don't, unke liye sab, they're like, what? Theek hai yaar, karo yaar. We've been through it through our past lives. They are only focused on spiritual. We are enjoying all, but we also should not, or if we are blessed, then we will also be touched by the spiritual aspect. But other aspects will be there. Dheere dheere wo chhoot jayenge. As you know, like we slowly feel, maybe not too many drinks or maybe too much partying. There's so many people I know who are so, rich and achieved, and they're like, I don't go for any parties anymore. मतलब वो छूट गया धीरे धीरे से. They're becoming more spiritual. Remember, you mentioned about this industrialists as well.
Yeah.
Right. And how, though outwardly they're robustly sort of everywhere, but internally they're so spiritual. That's where we, I think, are going to lead slow and steadily.
Yeah. I think the world is changing. There's a spiritual storm coming our way, and this is all just a part of that.
Absolutely.
I couldn't have thought of making content like this 3-4 years ago. In terms
Really?
of this wouldn't be accepted. This would be almost wrong to put out. And I think the world is in a way I think the world is generally in a different place.
I've never had a conversation like this. I mean, irrespective of whether this is a podcast or not, because for me, this is a super confluence of lovely thoughts coming together in the form of a podcast.
Yeah.
And thankfully, because other people are watching and they're enjoying it. But let me tell you that I've never had a conversation where so many things have come together. Imagine Aghoris, Maha Aghoris, yoga, aliens, Manasarovar, carnal desires, everything in one. I can only say, Har Har Mahadev, Har Har Mahadev,
Har Har Mahadev,
Alakh
sir.
Niranjan.
Alakh Niranjan. Love it, sir.
I had one person who said to me, Sala, tu Aghori ban raha lagta hai. I said, I wish.
Yeah.
Not in this life.
Wow. So, thank you once again. Another gorgeous episode. Of course, we're having you back on the show again. I'd love the listeners, the viewers to comment down below. Tell us on our social media what else you'd like to kind of learn from Mayur, sir. And for now, sir, I'm going to take a break because I just need some time to absorb all of this today. But thank you for being on the Ranveer show.
Can I say one thing too
Sure,
from my side? I would say that this was really a very beautifully, sincerely done initiative to bring so many aspects. I think the book Aghori and Untold Story was only a catalyst. But I think there's so much more that, we were able to bring out. And if our viewers are able to even connect, if not totally, even slightly to what we've spoken. I think that's a great thing for me. Having come here, thank you very much. I think I'm blessed
Likewise,
to
sir.
have been able to express myself and share my thoughts. And you were really good in terms of giving me that freedom and the aghoriness, the fearlessness to speak what I wanted to. I'd like to conclude from my side with a small little shloka, and my way of thanking you
Sure.
and all the viewers who have been watching this, as a sincere gratitude to them for making time to watch this. Let me say it. Shiva Shaktya Yukto Yadi Bhavati Shakta Prabhavitum Nache Devo Na Khalu Kushala Spanditumapi Atastvamadhyam Harihara Virinchadibhirapi Pranautum stotum va kathamakrita punya prabhavati. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namah Parvati Pataye Hara Hara Mahadeva. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So that was the lovely conversation with Mayur, sir. Of course, he's going to return on the Ranveer show. Spiritualism, whether it's the right hand of God or the left hand of God. We love speaking about these topics on the show. Lots more episodes like this coming your way. So make sure you follow us on Spotify. We're a Spotify exclusive, which means that every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. I'd love for the listeners of this podcast to spread the word about it, firstly. Secondly, do tell us through our social media channels about the other guests you'd like to see on the Ranveer show. What else would you like to learn? Which other topics would you like to explore? The darker, the better. Mayur Kalbag will be back on the Ranveer show very soon. Thank you for listening.